Welcome back, everybody. Joining me now is a best-selling author and journalist who hosted Hardball for more than 20 years. He's just written a memoir called This Country about his life in politics and history. Please welcome to a Late Show, Chris Matthews. Chris, good to see you again.
Steve, it's great to be on.
Now, the last time, we've talked many times over the years. I'll get to the last time we spoke in just a moment. One of the things I like talking to you about, other than the fact that you're, also a host, and so you really know how to eat up the time. I don't have to do any work when you're on. It's like a vacation. But the second is, you've seen so much in Washington. You work for Tip O'Neill. You work for Jimmy Carter. You obviously were the host of Hardball for years. But what was your first Washington job?
I was a Capitol policeman. I was appointed by a U.S. Senator under the old patronage system, and I loved it. I worked in the office of the Senator in the morning till 3, and then I went on the second shift from 3 to 11. I was doing 2 jobs, but I really like putting on that uniform and my gun and doing my job. I like the guys I work with.
Now, so as somebody who actually had that as his first experience professionally in Washington, D.C., what was it like personally for you to watch the horrific events of January 6th? How did that hit home for you?
It's like seeing your church invaded. It was like being defiled, everything you believed in. I used to love that building. I do love that building. I would take people, whatever job I was, whether it was top aide to the speaker or was a cop, I would take people to places like the British stairs, they call them. And that's the stairs coming up towards the House of Representatives met. And there were bullet holes in the ceiling still. And I said, look at the bullet holes. The British fought their way in here and burnt the place back in the War of 1812. So it meant a lot I would sit at night when no one else was around in the dark of the rotunda, where all the big paintings are. And I'd think about when John F. Kennedy was laid out there when he'd been shot and been assassinated. I would sit and imagine him there. I think of all the history of Lincoln giving the second inaugural address there, which tried to explain the Civil War, where we lost 600,000 men, and tried to explain that as penance for slavery. And he did that there. And FDR gave his, we have nothing to fear but fear itself there. They passed the Civil Rights Bill there. Both parties, more Republicans than Democrats, in 1964 in that building. So much history. It's a cathedral to democracy. And remember, the 9/11 guys tried to blow it up. They were stopped over Pennsylvania by those courageous passengers. It's everything. The cops I work with, one of them said to me, I'd die for this building. So I was so proud of them that when I finally got to see the good pictures of these guys, mostly men, especially that African-American guy who was in the picture, was leading them in the wrong direction. Remember, up the stairs? And
Officer Goodman.
That little pointer he had with him. He didn't have any real weapon to use. He couldn't use his revolver in that situation, just so he could protect Mitt Romney, Senator Romney from Utah, getting killed maybe.
Now, what do you make of people who are trying to sell this off as like, oh, it was no worse than, say, tourists in the Rotunda or in the Statuary Hall, or trying to say it wasn't really an insurrection, trying to downplay it because the Republicans know the Democrats are going to point at it and say, you can't trust these people?
Well, what would they have said if they had captured that crowd, that mob, had captured the Vice President of the United States, and God knows what do to him, or they'd found any member of Congress? They were out for blood. Everybody knows that. And they were protected by their staffs and by the police. That's what saved their lives, not the cause of Trumpism. Trumpism was on the march that moment, and it was frightening. And I think about, all these members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, they all swore an oath to the Constitution. Donald Trump did. General Michael Flynn, somebody should remind him, he took an oath to the Constitution of the United States. He didn't take an oath to Donald Trump. And they got to be reminded of their oaths sometimes.
Now, you've written the new book, as I said before, This Country, about the historical events that you lived through. When you look at the current moment the United States is going through, what periods of leadership and history in the world come to mind for you?
Well, Steve, I was lucky in my life to be at the center of the action so much. The fights, I was on the aircraft, the helicopter when Jimmy Carter was going down to defeat that morning, and he knew he was going to lose the election by 10 points. I was with him. I was with Tip O'Neill through all those fights with Reagan. Every morning with Tip O'Neill, the great legislative speaker, every morning with the guy. I was at the Berlin Wall on the communist side when the wall opened up, and I'd interview people. And I'll never forget interviewing a young guy in his 20s. He looked like he was at Berkeley back in the 60s. And I asked him, I said, what's it mean to you? Was ist Freiheit? What's freedom mean today to you? The wall coming down. He said, talking to you. Because it was a country that was not free and they couldn't talk to people like me. And I was in South Africa when Nelson Mandela, one of the greatest men of our time, encouraged the people of South Africa, the black majority, to vote. He said, we're not going to do this through a revolution.
I think we have a photo right here. This is you with Desmond Tutu for that vote.
Archbishop Tutu there to my left, and a South African cameraman. And he got them to vote. And if you look at the back of that, Steve, look at that line in the back of voters. It's like from horizon to horizon. That happened because one person, Nelson Mandela, said, we are going to have an election in this country where everybody gets to vote. And, I'm not going to come out of prison after 28 years. I'm not coming out of prison till you legalize the ANC, the African National Congress, and you legalize the Communist Party because I want a real election. He wouldn't leave prison so we could have a real election. And that's what he did, it without anybody shot or anything. He just said, we're going to make it work as a democracy. And I think of those people waiting in line in Africa with not a cup of tea, a cup of water, a place to go to the bathroom, or anything. And I think about people that don't take democracy seriously in this country. This is what everybody in the world wanted, the good people, and we have it. And we've had an election since 1788, every 2 years for Congress, every 4 years for president. We're not the fifth republic like in France. We're the first republic, and it's always worked. But we always counted on people who lost elections, just like when you played tag as a kid, to say, I lost. And to stand before their people and look them in the eye and say, I lost. The other person won. And under our system, that person's president now. And Trump wouldn't do that. That one honorable act that everybody else, Hillary Clinton had to do that at the Pennsylvania Hotel when she lost, a shocking loss, and she had to say it. And Mitt Romney had to say it, John McCain and John Kerry and Al Gore. Everybody in our lifetime stands up there and say, I lost. In this democracy, that's what matters. And some of those people, like Hillary Clinton, had gotten more votes than the other guy. And they still said, I lost because the electoral college system under our Constitution governs victory. That is the admirable thing. I love concession speeches because it shows the heart of people who want to be in politics but are willing to take the risk of humiliation. At some point in your career as a politician, you have to be ready to take the risk that you will be humiliated, that people will say to you, we don't want you anymore. Go. And that person has to be ready for that morally, physically, so you don't cry too much in public. Some people do. But you got to take it. And this guy, Clinton, the most honorable thing about the office is the willingness to walk away from it. It's not yours.
We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'll ask Chris about the day he left MSNBC and whether that took anyone by surprise.